Hi everyone, welcome to Music Ally Focus. I'm Music Ally's editor, Joe Sparrow, and I'm joined, excitingly, this week by Sarah Sukaran, who is also from Music Ally. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me on the famous podcast.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, can you just, for the listeners out there, explain your job at musically.com, please?
Yeah, of course. So I work on the marketing and training side at Music Ally. So kind of developing a lot of our content on Music Ally Pro. And also, we do some marketing consultancy, helping out the training team on that side. And also our live training things. So really just managing that whole process.
So the good news here, folks, is we've got someone who understands marketing, unlike me, a clown who doesn't at all and just recognizes it when it's poking me in the eye in the form of adverts and things like that. So one piece of feedback we've had from doing the Music Ally Focus podcast is that people really like when we have people on who are analyzing marketing campaigns, analyzing activations and talking about those things so that the listeners can use them in their own work. Hence, having Sarah on the podcast, and thank you for being the willing victim here, Sarah. So what we're going to do is pull out a few recent campaigns of note that Sarah has been writing about and researching for Music Ally Pro, and we're going to talk about them, which sounds good to me. So, Sarah, let's jump straight in. You've picked out 3 examples of some recent campaigns that on Music Ally Pro, which is Music Ally's pro marketing platform, that you have and your team have written about as notable. So what's the first one? And let's have a look at it.
Cool. So I guess the first one I'll start with is one from the artist Lainey Wilson, country artist. And I believe this was an activation that was done with Lee Martin, the developer. He's done a lot of really cool activations that are a lot of the time using the custom APIs of streaming platforms and building out these really personalized experiences for fans that kind of allow you to engage with the music in a different way. So for this one, this was for Lainey Wilson's album Whirlwind. And essentially they created this application where you can log in with, I think, Spotify, Apple Music, and essentially they determine your location and it looks at the wind pattern and the wind speed of where you currently are and personalizes a song from the album that you should be listening to. So yeah, pretty cool.
So this is a really good example, isn't it, of one that it's a simple idea, but it fits, and personalization it feels quite important to people at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things I think about with this is kind of similar in the Spotify Wrapped sort of thing. Everyone gets really excited about that, and everyone wants to share their version of it because it's unique to them. So I really like this example of kind of taking that personalization, but also bringing it back to the album and the music behind it.
And so this is something which it doesn't, just to give the listeners an idea. We will link to the article so you can click this below the podcast and you can look at this while we're talking. But this is something which I guess lived on her website and it linked across to Spotify, connected with Spotify. So did it then also, I guess, increase her follower numbers as well? As well as streams?
So generally for this one, so I'm not exactly sure about the follower number specifically, but with these types of applications, because they are integrated with the streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, depending on what people log in with, they are able to, like, it essentially counts as a stream towards the track.
Yeah.
You can listen to it within the experience, which is really cool. So yeah, it's a way of people are going to listen to the track in the experience, which increases the streams. They also share it along to their own social profiles, encouraging other people to try it out. And I think when you have that personalization of it and you get, tailored that this song matches the wind of where you're at currently, I think it makes you want to go back and listen to that song again and again because you're like, oh, this is perfectly matched to this moment.
So it connects the listener to a specific song. So they're building a sort of stronger connection with a specific song on the album in the first place, which is exactly, I guess, kind of nice. It helps contextualize the music. It's about a place, so you're also making a sort of emotional pull on that. And yeah, of course, you're gamifying streaming. And I guess when you listen to one song, I presume it will then play you more songs from the same album on Spotify. And this is something which it feels like is not probably too difficult for anyone to do, right? You need a good idea and a platform that allows you to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the streaming applications, I think they can be fairly costly sometimes to implement. But depending on the type of activation you want to do, as long as you find the right people and you understand the technical capabilities of custom streaming applications, it is doable. And if you want to invest in that area, I think it's a really cool thing, and it allows the fans to engage on a deeper level. And there's been a lot more examples of this type, which for this one, for example, it's specific to your current location and the current wind. But I can go back in and do this tomorrow at a different place, or even in the same place, and the wind's different, so I'm going to get targeted a different song. So it is something that you can continually engage in and kind of have that connection to the album throughout time and to different songs throughout time.
Yeah, it's kind of smart because, again, if you look at the screenshots that we've grabbed on the website on Music Ally Pro, you can see that it's quite simple. You go to this page, you've got the promise of a personalized experience. You log into Spotify, or I guess you can Apple Music as well, you can use. And then it figures it out for you. For example, it says here, your 9-mile-per-hour wind from the southeast determined you should listen to Call a Cowboy, the song. Now, you shouldn't actually call a cowboy to fix the wind. But, that in itself seems a bit like sort of silly and throwaway. Like, what's the connection here? But it's not about that, is it? It's about that you are picking a few parameters, you're building this personalized connection, and then they're connected to your Spotify, and you're getting a stream out of it.
Yeah.
That feels like a pretty strong... I guess you could combine this even with like pre-saving or all sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the time with these, once you log in with Spotify, you're essentially, you're giving permission for them to take actions on your behalf from your Spotify profile. So I think in other activations, you can sort of link that, by joining this, you're pre-saving a new release or maybe adding the song to your library. So you're giving permission in a lot of cases to do those things if the team builds that in. I don't know if that was the case in this particular example. But
it feels quite soft and acceptable. You're not being tricked into anything. You're doing something you want to do and you're happy about it, which is nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good one. A good way to kick things off. You do click through and have a look at that one. What's the second one on our list here, Sarah?
So the second one is from the Cardigans, and it's not a specific activation or anything, but they basically have started creating some content on TikTok. And I think it's the first time they've joined TikTok, and they're essentially revitalizing their music on that platform. And I think it's something interesting for catalog teams to try and get to meet that younger audience and make that connection. And TikTok's a great place for that. And we as a team just thought they were doing a really good job of it.
So this is really interesting for a number of reasons. Number one, that the Cardigans are referred to on Music Ally Pro here as a legacy act, which, as someone who can remember the Cardigans from the first time round, made me feel particularly old. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah. But this is an example, I think, of one of those things that I think loads. It feels like a sort of free money in a sense, right? You've got an established act that have already got all that infrastructure and investment behind them. You've got a solid set of songs in their catalog that people have probably heard. Like, if you haven't heard Love Fool, I don't know what planet you've been on, right? And then I've also got connections to their music was in some big movies back in the day as well. And so then it's just about connecting that to TikTok in a way that works. So how do they do it in a way that felt right for the fussy Gen Z lot?
Well, I think, as you mentioned, Love Fool, that's kind of the core of it. Of a lot of people, everyone knows that song, I think. I don't know if there is a person on this planet who has not heard that song. It doesn't matter how old or how young you are. Like, it has been, as you said, it has had some pop culture moments in films and TV and references in a lot of different places. So I think what is interesting is they have leaned on that, and they start off by, using Love Fool. What they've done is kind of collected all of those different areas that they were in. So they were in the office, for example. There's a lot of footage of promotions of the song and films that it was in, and kind of like putting that footage together. But I think
It was in Romeo and Juliet, famously, I think, wasn't it? The
there you
Baz
go.
Luhrmann
Yeah.
movie. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think what the main thing that they're doing that's really important with making that connection with Gen Z, and that I think is really good on TikTok, is other than the footage, they are using the style of TikTok that works well with Gen Z. So, for example, their captions are they're using the text on screen that is the style of TikTok that feels very native, and it's also sort of like making fun of things. So one of the examples is turns out your parents' music isn't, and they have the supposedly chocolate emoji, but we know what it all means.
Yes, right.
So yeah, I think even something as simple as that, as using an emoji, that is, that's quite common in this type of text captions on screen. So yeah, it's kind of repurposing old footage and relevant footage that people might have heard, but connecting it back to the band through their official profile now.
Yeah, what it looks like they've done is they've sort of grabbed. It feels like they're not trying to be, hello there, fellow kids. They're not trying to be too cool. But what they're doing is they're taking the original videos, which still look good.
Yeah.
They're taking other assorted content, like they've got Sabrina Carpenter footage of her singing one of their songs. They've got clips of The Office, and they've also got clips of the band today as well.
Yeah. So I think that was really cool, as well as just the fact that I think playing on that moment of Sabrina Carpenter is obviously huge right now and popular with Gen Z. And at one of her shows, she covered the song. I think it was a mashup of one of her songs plus Love Fool, and so they've used that content a lot, just kind of referring it to bringing it back to the song, but then also doing the actual band reacting to her playing their song. And I think using that content that's already connecting in a certain way, but just pulling it back into the band, because I think there's a lot of people, like I'll admit, I know Love Fool. I know of the Cardigans because of Love Fool. Yeah. I don't think I had ever heard any other songs by the Cardigans before seeing this TikTok. And then someone in the office starts playing it, and I was like, "Oh, this is really good." So I think it's
a classic indie pop band. Yeah,
there you go. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it now. But it's kind of taking the stuff that people do know and then reconnecting it to the band and using that to start building an audience. And I've seen now they're creating more content, kind of showcasing their other songs in their catalog. So it's kind of that like step-by-step process of reeling you in and then starting to get people to know the rest of their catalog.
And that's one of the things that we've seen this a lot in recent months, and I guess the last couple of years, which is artists establishing themselves on TikTok from that sort of from catalog, if you like. So, and of course, this kind of works really, really well for them, because I was going to say the Carpenters, I mean the Cardigans, because they're from the 90s, and that's having a moment. And they've got this song which everyone knows but doesn't realize they know, and it was in all this kind of media at the time that people also know. But that it's interesting, isn't it, that this is a sort of validation of why TikTok works, because not only the band don't have to try too hard here. They've got all this catalog of stuff, of images, clips, videos. They're packaging it well in a way that kind of says, hey, you already know this, or you don't know it, but you're going to like it. And then it works, it connects, because those songs worked the first time round and they're working the second time round. And then also it obviously encourages TikTok users to go and use the songs on their own video.
Yeah.
And so like it's one of those examples of getting TikTok right, and it being also I think it feels like quite low workload in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the other things I like about it is I think we've spoken to a lot of labels, especially when we're talking on the catalog side of things. There's the issue of perhaps the artist isn't around anymore, or the case of the artists. Of course, we want to tap into that audience, but the artists don't really want to be filming content.
Right.
They didn't grow up in that sort of environment, and even as artists, they'd done interviews and things like that, but actually like the idea of sitting down in your free time and recording a video for TikTok, that is not always something you can get catalog.
You've got to want to do that, haven't
exactly.
you? If you're going to do it, you've got to want to do it, or people can tell that it's inauthentic.
Exactly. So I think in what I like about these examples, the band is involved in some cases by reacting to content and things like that. But there are a lot of pieces of content that are really just pulling from things that already exist. I think the big thing for me is I think using that text on screen with an interesting caption that does feel like native and organic to TikTok. It's a really simple thing that management or social media teams can actually do that on behalf of the artist. It still connects to the artists. Or in the case of, having them react to content, it's a simple thing that they don't need to have to spend a lot of time doing.
Yeah. It's definitely validation of the idea that as an artist team, you should keep meticulously organized all the extraneous content that you have, so have an archive of photos, videos, pictures of old flyers and things like that, because this kind of stuff, as time goes on, it actually increases in value in terms of what you can do with it.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is I think you can have a lot of archival footage and things like that. The thing with TikTok and short form content is how do you repackage that content? Because you can just post an old clip, and I've seen that being done before with catalog, and it just doesn't feel very native to TikTok or to Reels, for example. So just kind of repackaging that same content with a few little tweaks can make it feel really organic on the platform.
So if you are an artist with a good catalog, hire a 17-year-old.
There you go.
Get them to look through your hard drive of images from 1998, and magic will happen. And I would like to point out as well that Nina from the Cardigans has aged particularly well. She looks kind of the same as she did in 1999, which is remarkable. So that's a good example. We'll put a link to that Pro article as well. And what's the final one we've got to look at here, please?
So the final example is one I'm really excited about, because we are currently preparing for our Pro Live webinar on elevating the fan experience, and this one just fits into that so well.
Extremely good plug there. I appreciate it.
There you go. Much. Just smooth. I'm really good at that.
Professional. This is your first appearance as well.
But yeah, basically this one is from Peggy Gou, and so we've included in our weekly roundup this example that she did for her London show, and it was a fan design contest. But she's actually done this for several different shows in different cities, and what it is leading up to the show, she hosts a fan design contest and gets fans to submit designs for any cool merch that they like. There's really not a lot of boundaries there. It's kind of like design some merch. It doesn't need to be like a t-shirt design. It doesn't need to be a specific product. It's just design something. And then the submissions go through, and before the show they pick 2 winners who I think get VIP passes to the show. They get credit for the merch and a design fee as well. And then they also print that merch and sell it at the shows. So it's very exclusive, involves the fans, lots of things going on there.
So this is really interesting, because when we talk about artists engaging with their fans and building a direct-to-fan relationship and leveraging fandom and super fandom and all these things, it does sound like it's a bit overwhelming. But actually, this is also, again, quite smart in that it's simple. Is that fans are already excited by Peggy Gou. They are, talented and can come up with good ideas. So they just make stuff, and then the artist picks a couple of really good ones, and then merch happens, because there is a sort of merch pipeline now, and then everyone's excited. I mean, what did they come up with? Can you give us an example of merchandise?
So these are my favorite, the ones that we've put into here. So for the London show, someone developed like an Oyster card, but it's like a Gooster card. And it's got like different images of Peggy Gou on it, but it's basically like an identification / Oyster card.
So it looks like, for those of you who are not Londoners, it's the Oyster card is the travel card that allows you to tap in and out of tubes and buses and things like that. So it looks like a travel card, right? But it's
brilliant.
Bespoke to her. Yeah.
And then the second piece was very unique. Essentially, it was a receipt from Tesco, but it was branded as Tesco. So all quite related to Peggy Gou, but also super, super London focused. And this was for the London show. So I think that was one of the really fun things about this design contest, is that because they were happening for different cities. Like every time a show was coming up, I think she did one in South Korea, Seoul, and then also in Brazil, there was one as well. So the fans are designing content and designing merch specifically for that city, for that
Yeah.
show, which means you're getting really localized, exclusive things, but also just a nice, interesting piece of content, very different from what you would typically get at a merch stand.
Exactly, and it sort of bypasses this. Well, two things it does. One is that it's clearly authentic because it's come from fans. It sort of, and then it also bypasses the sort of what we would expect that a marketing, design, branding team would come up with as a clever idea. I mean, they would probably come up with these kind of things, but it
Yeah,
feels more authentic because you know it's come from fans, and that's quite an
for
important thing,
sure.
isn't it? And these examples that you just mentioned, which is like a supermarket receipt and a travel card, they're kind of smart as well because they allow the artist to pick things that help define who that artist is. So, for example,
Mhm.
these are quite grounded. You know,
Yeah.
everyone has receipts in their pocket. Everyone has a travel card, and so it kind of helps build that connection as well. Although I will say that if you look at the receipt, on the fake receipt, the things that have been purchased are what I would call very London: truffle chips,
Yep.
honey butter almonds, ginger shot, whatever. That's fine. But it's localized, right? So it's
Yeah.
localized. It's authentic, and it also allows the artist to build their persona as well. And you're right. It says here that the winners won prizes and VIP tickets. I guess from an artist perspective, you've also got to be a bit careful here that you're not seen to be sort of leveraging your fans as free labor.
Yeah. So I think that's what I really like about this example as well is a lot of the time when we talk about, super fans and serving the fans, a lot of people tend to think about what they can get out of the fans in terms of money and like, oh,
Mm.
how many,
Mm.
what products can we sell to get money from the fans? So this is something that is, getting the fans involved in a really fun way, but they're also giving design fees and credit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
actually, I'm not sure the details of how they work it out, but
Mm.
on every contest that is announced, the two winners will receive like a fee and will be compensated for their
Right.
work.
Right.
So it's a great way of, I mean, fans know what fans want. So I think it's amazing to have the fans
Yeah. Yeah.
involved in actually designing merch, but then at the same time also crediting them for their work, which I think that's a really special experience for anyone who's a fan of an artist to be like, oh
Yeah,
my
and
God, they're
also I
pissed.
guess it's that thing of it's that complicated sort of thing, isn't it? That fans enjoy doing, and I mean this in a positive way, like what could be determined as free work. They
Yeah.
like doing this creative, inventive work because it makes them part of the fandom, and
Yeah.
they know that other fans are doing it. They look forward to sharing it and seeing other fan reactions,
Yeah.
so that they're getting something out of it, and it's a bit like they're getting the sense of community and
Exactly.
that's all around the artist. So from an artist perspective, that's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think generally when we talk about fans, like the big thing is community and connection, whether that's with the artist or with other fans. And I think this is a great example of doing that, but also it still compensates the fans for their work. So not
Yeah.
necessarily taking advantage, but it is also like it's treating both sides essentially.
And one of the things that you mentioned on the Music Ally Pro page that this is on is a really interesting idea, which is like then you can start taking these things a little bit further. So it says here, what our team has been wondering, could this Oyster card also be used as a fan loyalty card of some sort? So it opens up
Yeah,
these other opportunities. Like if you're going to make the merch and it's a card with a magnetic stripe on or whatever, well, you may as well make it into it becomes quickly clear that it's once you've got a solid idea, you can then use platforms, use manufacturing, and use these things which are within everyone's grasp to actually build out these experiences even more.
yeah, exactly. And I think I mean, these are really creative designs and things, and even like the idea of turning that into a fan loyalty card or something like that. I just think to get a really cool creative example, it always comes through collaboration. So
Yeah.
getting that initial idea from the fans, and then the team maybe looking at those fan designs, then coming up with more ideas of how that could become something even cooler than what they've already designed. I think that is just a really cool process of showcasing that genuine connection of how the artist and their team is working with the fans to produce something that makes everyone happy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, 3 really good examples there. And I've said this already, but there are links to those below the podcast. And do check them out on Music Ally Pro. Just to wrap things up, So this is a weekly post on Music Ally Pro, right? Can you explain what this is?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of these examples came from a couple different of our weekly roundups. So this is something that we publish on Music Ally Pro every week, essentially. And it's where we, as a team, highlight things that have happened in the week or that we've come across in the week that we think are really good examples of what you could be doing. They provide inspiration for artist teams and managers and, artists themselves as well. Just of what you could be doing or just to provide some inspiration.
So just keeping a lookout for really good examples of stuff.
Exactly.
And then you're sort of brain dumping them all here. And if you're working with artists or in marketing, you can just go and steal the ideas. That's what you're saying, right?
There you go.
I'm putting words in your mouth, but yeah.
Yeah, so there's that.
Okay. Good to know. Okay, so yes, do check it out, Music Ally Pro. And Sarah also mentioned that there is a webinar on, what was it on again?
It's on elevating the fan experience.
Elevating the fan experience.
Yes.
So I'll put a link to that below the podcast and elevate away, folks. So that's it, Sarah. Thank you. We will get you back on Music Ally Pro in a few weeks, and we'll do the same thing again.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Joe.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone. And thanks for joining us here, as ever, on Music Ally Focus. See you soon.